In a grand ballroom lit by crystal chandeliers, the wealthiest and most powerful figures of the city gathered for an exclusive charity gala. Every guest sparkled in designer suits and glittering gowns. But amid the sea of familiar elite faces sat a woman who didn't quite fit in the eyes of some. She was wonderful. A black woman in a flowing emerald dress, seated at the head table. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some wondered who she was, while others looked on with quiet envy. One man, however, felt a dangerous surge of jealousy and arrogance. He didn't know her identity, didn't care to ask, and couldn't fathom how she earned the right to sit among billionaires. To him, she was an outsider, a mistake in a world built for privilege. His envy boiled into rage. Then, before anyone could stop him, he stormed toward her. With eyes blazing with contempt, he raised his hand, and the sharp sound of a slap silenced the entire hall. Gasps echoed. Glasses froze midair. Every eye turned in horror. He had just publicly struck the billionaire's wife, and within moments, his life and empire would begin to crumble. The woman he had slapped was Alicia Monroe, wife of Richard Monroe, a billionaire known not only for his empire, but also for his reputation of never forgetting an insult. Alicia wasn't just a trophy wife. She was educated, powerful in her own right, and respected for her elegance and strength. But to jealous eyes, she was still judged for her skin color, her presence in a space dominated by the so-called elite. The man who had struck her was Gregory Hales, the CEO of a mid-sized investment firm. Gregory was arrogant, ambitious, and deeply insecure. For months, he had been chasing one golden opportunity, a billion-dollar merger with Richard Monroe's empire. Tonight's gala was meant to finalize their deal. Instead, his impulsive act had set the stage for disaster. As Gregory's palm connected with Alicia's cheek, silence fell. Every guest stared in disbelief. Alicia didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply sat still, her eyes steady, her dignity unbroken. The room trembled with tension as whispers turned into shocked murmurs. Richard Monroe hadn't yet entered the ballroom. He was minutes away, unaware that his wife had just been publicly humiliated. Gregory, panting with arrogance, believed for a fleeting second that he had put her in her place. But he had just lit a fuse that would destroy him. News of the slap spread across the ballroom like wildfire. Guests pulled out their phones, recording discreetly. Some glared at Gregory with disgust, while others, fueled by their own prejudices, quietly nodded in approval. But everyone knew one thing. When Richard arrived, there would be consequences. Alicia slowly stood, her posture unshaken, her emerald gown shimmering under the lights. She didn't touch her cheek. Instead, she looked Gregory directly in the eye. There was no fear, only a piercing calmness that unsettled him. For the first time, he realized he might have made a grave mistake. The doors swung open. Richard Monroe entered with his towering presence, shaking hands with dignitaries as the crowd turned. Gregory's heart pounded. He needed to act fast. If Richard learned about the incident, the billion-dollar deal would evaporate. But Alicia didn't raise her voice. She simply whispered to a close associate. Within seconds, Richard's advisors swarmed around him, murmuring urgently. His smile faded. His gaze shifted across the room until it landed on Alicia, and then on Gregory. The room grew colder. Richard strode across the marble floor, every step echoing like a warning bell. He reached his wife, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and asked quietly, "What happened?" Before Alicia could answer, Gregory panicked. He rushed forward, trying to control the narrative. "It's nothing, Richard, just a misunderstanding. Your wife, she was out of line," and the gasps grew louder. To accuse Alicia in front of everyone was suicide. Richard's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened. "You struck my wife?" His voice was low, steady, and terrifying. Gregory stammered. "No, It was... She provoked me." But Richard didn't explode. Instead, he stepped aside and looked at Alicia. "You decide," he said softly. "How should this man be handled?" The power shifted. Alicia now held Gregory's fate. In her hands, Alicia turned slowly, facing the entire crowd. Every billionaire, every politician, every socialite in the room watched her. She could have demanded his arrest. She could have screamed for vengeance. But instead, she spoke with a calm strength that pierced the silence. "Men like Gregory," she began, her voice clear and steady, "believe that skin color or gender defines worth. They think wealth grants them the right to humiliate others. But true power lies not in arrogance, not in violence, but in dignity." Gregory's face drained of color. He muttered, "Please, don't do this." Alicia continued, her eyes never leaving his. "You struck me out of hatred, out of envy. But you didn't just slap me. You slapped every woman who's been told she doesn't belong. You slapped every person judged for the color of their skin. And for that, Gregory, you don't deserve a seat at this table." She turned to Richard. "Cancel his deal. Let him learn that arrogance has a price." Richard nodded once. In a single motion, his assistants pulled out documents, tearing them apart in front of Gregory. The billion-dollar deal vanished in seconds. The crowd erupted in whispers. Gregory fell to his knees, begging, "Please, Alicia, I didn't mean it. Please, Richard, my company, my life." But Alicia looked down at him, her voice like steel. "I do not deal with the small-minded, and those who judge by color will never succeed." Gregory was escorted out, his empire already collapsing before his eyes. Within days, news outlets across the country reported on the scandal. CEO assaults. Billionaire's wife loses fortune overnight. Investors abandoned him, partners cut ties. His downfall was swift and brutal. Meanwhile, Alicia became a symbol of strength. Social media flooded with praise. The dignity she showed was more powerful than any revenge. She hadn't raised her hand, hadn't shouted, yet she had destroyed a man with nothing but her words and her presence. At the next gala, she walked in hand with Richard, greeted not just as the billionaire's wife, but as a voice of power in her own right. And though Gregory's name faded into obscurity, his story became a cautionary tale whispered among the elite. Never mistake dignity for weakness. Never underestimate the strength of a woman. And never, ever believe that arrogance will protect you from the truth. Because in that ballroom, one slap had changed everything. Not for Alicia, but for the man who thought he could break her, and that night the world learned a lesson. Those who judge by skin, by gender, by prejudice, are already destined to lose.